Hello, good morning, and welcome. Today's practice is going to be a 20-minute practice to give the hips some love. Now, when I say hips, technically the hip is the hip bone, but we're going to use it like many of us do in our culture to refer to the general area just below the back, and work on some movements, postures. Some will feel like strength things, some will feel like stretch things, and just get this part of your body warmed up. I like doing this kind of stuff either before a day of sitting. So if you're planning to travel at all this summer, it's great to do even just a few minutes of one of these, a couple of these things, or after you've done a whole day of sitting. So maybe after a whole day in the car or a day at the chair in the office, home office perhaps. So that is my hope and my intention for today. As always, participate in whatever feels good or interesting to you, and explore with me, and skip and do your own thing whenever that calls to you. All right, I'm gonna step back onto my mat. One thing that is useful to have for today is a blanket. Ideally, for lots of yoga things, a sturdy blanket works best, but especially today, but grab any blanket you have so you can explore, and then you can see if maybe a sturdier blanket changes things for you. So I'm going to start in a seated position. Feel free to start however you feel is necessary or welcoming for you. And take any posture, doesn't have to be my posture. And start by welcoming yourself into your space. Even if it's a familiar space, today is a new day and it's a new moment. Take in the light, the colors, the shapes. Maybe you notice something that you want to have in a different place. Maybe you feel differently about it after class. And then if you like, close your eyes and take in and welcome yourself into your inner environment, your body, and not just your physical body, but your presence, yourself, your being. Welcome any of the thoughts, sensations, and emotions that are with you right now. And perhaps you become aware of some of what I like to call the signs of life, your heartbeat, blood flowing, breath moving, these natural rhythms that are ever present and ever with you. And as you feel ready, start to move maybe into a rounded back from wherever you are. Cat pose, curl your chin in. I'm leaning back just before I fall over. That seems to feel fun and interesting for me right now. And then shift forward into an arched back. So squeeze the shoulder blades together, perhaps lift the chin, to stretch the front of your throat, and then round into your cat back again. You could do this from standing or hands and knees, wherever you are. Wake up the spine. And then perhaps find an ending for that and start to lean over to one side for a side bending stretch. If you like, bring your arm up and over with you. And notice if you feel that in the side body, but see if it extends down into that area we're referring to as the hips, a little bit lower. And then come up and over to the other side. And perhaps you go back and forth a few times, flowing at your own pace. Nice. The next time you're upright, pause, and then twist to the right. So maybe take your left hand over to your thigh if you're seated, right hand back behind you. And there's nothing special you need to do with your breath, but there is something about tuning into it that can be nice. So if you like, over and over again, tune in. Let's twist to the other side when you're ready. So twist over to the right. I'm gonna let this person in. Notice what's different about this side. And then come back to your starting position in the middle here, and perhaps bring the soles of the feet together, the knees wide for a butterfly or Baddha Konasana, bound angle shape. And if you like, walk the hands forward any amount and fold slightly towards the feet. And perhaps here, if you're like me, this is the first place I'm starting to really feel that area on the side of my hips. You might even rock a little side to side or sway within the shape. Okay, when you're ready, come on up to hands and knees. Feel free to pad the knees with the blanket. And then from tabletop or hands and knees, kick your left leg back behind you. Bend the knee so that the foot is pointing flat to the sky, and start to pump the leg a few inches up and down. This is what one of my very first teachers lovingly called the "yes, I love my butt" pose. You might start to feel some action firing up in the back of the leg, the buttock, the outer hip. And then shift it over to the side so your knee points sideways like a half frog shape, and start to make a circle here on the side. Any size, any speed. Go in both directions a few times. Nice. And then swing your foot, or your knee rather, forward so you can bring your foot to the front of your mat. And for this, just for today, have the hands inside of the foot and the foot wide. So maybe your foot is near the pinky finger, your hands are inside. If you have blocks at home and that helps you feel just a little taller, this would be a place for them. And then explore and see if there's a little bit of wiggle room to rock your hips slightly forward and back within this shape. Check in with your right knee, make sure it's happy. And then perhaps pause in this more lizard or wide lunge shape. Slide your foot back to tabletop when you're ready. And then let's do that on the other side. So lift your right leg up, bend your knee so the foot points flat to the sky. Yes, I love my butt. Pump the leg. And then sideways, bring it over to the side for big circles. And as best you can, breathe in and out through the nose. Unless you're a mouth breather, which is a thing, that is possible. As best you can, breathe in and out through your nose. Change directions, go a few times the other way. And then step the foot forward outside of your pinky finger. So your hands are set up inside of your leg for this lizard style or wide lunge. And then see if there's some wiggle room to shift the hips back and forth within this shape. Again, if you want to lift the hands up to blocks or even the side of a chair. that can be a nice variation. And then pause in your lizard lunge. Notice what happens if you gaze slightly forward of the hands. And then slide your foot back to meet the other one. Perhaps take a moment here in child's pose. Shift the hips back, rest the head on the hands or the floor. And then either return to tabletop, or if you want to take this up a notch, come on up to downward facing dog. And by up a notch, I just mean create a little bit more heat, have a little bit more energy flow, and you can always change your mind. From here, lift your left leg high to the sky. And then step your foot outside your pinky finger. Now your back leg is lifted, and it's a much more active lizard lunge. We're going to go back and forth. So push into the hands, step the foot back, downward facing dog. My blanket's in the way here. Other side, right leg lifts high. Step forward to the outside of your pinky finger. You're welcome to lower the knee if you'd like. And then step back, downward dog. Go back and forth a few times at your own pace. Feel free to stay in the lizard lunge for a moment. And if being up in downward dog feels like, okay, I tried that and now I'm losing steam, you can do this from hands and knees as well. And there's plenty going on. It's just going to feel different. All right, a few more times back and forth. You don't have to wait for me if you feel complete. I'm going to do one last one. And then perhaps pause on downward dog. If you prefer, rest in tabletop. I'm taking a moment now just to feel both sides of my body working together. All right, from here, lower down to hands and knees. And come and sit. Swing your legs around to the front. Lean back on the hands and swish the knees from side to side. Nice. And then pause with your feet flat, knees in the air, and swing the feet around to the right so that you come into what's sometimes referred to as a 90-90 position, but really your legs are not 90 degrees per se, but both legs are bent. It's maybe more of an S shape. And start to lean in any direction. See if you feel some stretch through the outer hip. So this is a variation of pigeon pose. Play with leaning in a couple of different directions. And then see if there's a spot where you're like, oh, that feels good. That stretch feels fun or interesting, and perhaps pause there. You're welcome to keep both knees bent, or if you prefer to lean so that you can straighten out the back leg for more of the traditional half pigeon shape, change it to whatever shape feels good for you. You're welcome to stay upright, or you can lean forward or rest on the elbows. Take a few moments here. And then walk yourself back up. Bend your back leg if you straightened it so you're returning to your S shape, your seated, relaxed pigeon, if you will. And then swing the legs around to the other side. And we'll do the same here. So starting with the S shape, which by itself is a great position for just waking up the hips and hip mobility. And then lean in any direction here. Notice all the sensations and see where you want to pause for a few moments. If you decide to straighten out your back leg, go right ahead. Changing it into a different style pigeon, and then maybe folding or resting on the elbows. None of these variations is ever better than the other. They simply feel different. And so you are in charge and in choice to create your experience. All right, when you're ready, walk yourself back up, bend your back knee if it's straight behind you, and swing the legs around to the front now. Give them a little shake, and perhaps walk gently towards the feet and thighs in a super gentle forward fold. Come on back up to sit and find your blanket. We're going to do two more things, and the second one involves the blanket, but I want you to have it ready so you can just grab it. So ideally, you have sort of a medium-sized rectangle, and what you want is the longer edge. And then you can either fold it several times, or I'm going to roll it so that I have a longer cylinder, and you don't need it terribly thick. It's going to be fine because your body weight's going to come on it. You want it on the skinnier side. And then place that next to you so you can reach for it and come down onto your back. We're going to do a bridge variation before we use the blanket. So take a moment, perhaps squeeze the knees in. And then rest the feet flat on the floor, arms down by your side. As best you can, lift the balls of your feet off the ground. So my heels stay on the floor, but the toes and the balls of the feet lift. If that means you need to bring your heels out a little bit away from your bum, try that. And if it's not possible, you can skip it and bring the toes down. Palms down to support, toes and balls of feet lifted. And now kick your heels and drive them into the floor. Lift your hips up in a variation of bridge pose. If you need to, come down, adjust your foot position or heel position, and then drive your heels up. Now try as best you can to keep the toes lifted and the balls of your feet lifted, and take your knees as wide as you can without lowering your bum. Ooh, I'm starting to feel some feelings in those outer hips. And then squeeze the knees back together, almost like you're bringing in that thigh master move from way back in the day. Everybody remember those infomercials? I might be dating myself. If at any point your feet start to cramp, feel free to lower them down, but you'll notice it's very different if you have the heels on the floor versus if you have the whole foot on the floor. Nice. Try a few more. If you're still with me, squeeze the legs together in the middle and then let them open. Squeeze. Last one. Squeeze and then lower down. Whew. Relax your feet, maybe stretch yourself out. All right, now we're going to use the blanket, and what I hope feels really good. Lift your hips just enough that you can slide that skinny roll sideways, and then rest yourself down on it, and you'll figure out exactly where, but you kind of want the sides of the blanket to stick out on either side a little bit. And maybe your sacrum, just below the tailbone, is on the blanket. Bring your left knee in towards your chest and extend your right leg down along the floor. Might feel awkward for just a second. It's wind relieving pose. And then take your right hand on the knee and help yourself roll over to the right, so that your outer hip, this fleshy bit, starts to roll onto the blanket, and hopefully the blanket gives a little bit of pressure in that area in a feel-good way. That is my hope. So you might have to adjust where you are to get that spot. Oh yeah. It's not quite as intense as having, say, a tune-up ball in that area, but my hope is that it feels like there's some good kind of pressure there. Rest in the twist for a moment. And then unwind, steady your feet flat so you can switch to the other side. Ooh, you might have to shimmy your bum. Now straighten your left leg down, bring the right knee in. We'll do the same thing to the other side. So take your left hand now and help yourself roll to the left. And see if you can get that blanket roll to just be right about that fleshy bit in the side. Oh. This is one of those I feel like I could stay in for a little while. All right, when you're ready, unroll yourself. Slide the blanket out and maybe down. Rest for a moment with the legs long. Stretch your arms up overhead. Maybe even interlace the fingers and press the palms away from you. And then draw your knees in towards your chest. Give yourself a big squeeze. Roll to one side and gently press your way up to a comfortable seat. Take your time, take a moment, and look around your space again. Notice what, if anything's changed outside of you or inside of you. And if this is serving as a warm-up to a bigger exercise routine that you have in mind, feel free to continue if you'd like to spend some time and rest before you transition to your day. I totally support that. And if you're live here, I'll stay on for some questions, comments, or just to check in. Thank you so much for your presence and your practice, and I'll see you next time.